Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 15 defenses to stream for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, we're going to be discussing in depth into 5 different defenses that I believe you guys should be looking to pick up off the waiver wire right now based upon their matchups on the week. But before we could get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below, because not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I would also like to ask, if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me on there, to please do so at Notorious FNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 15 defenses to stream. We begin with my number 1 defense to stream on the week, and that is the Miami Dolphins going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Miami. Right now, the Dolphins defense is currently being rostered in 49.2% of leagues on NFL.com. If you are on ESPN, CBS, Yahoo, any other fantasy football platform, then the roster percentage is going to be slightly different for all of these defenses. So the Miami Dolphins were on bye last week in week number 14, so we'll go ahead and hop in the time machine, go back 1 week to week number 13 to go look at their defensive stats. Now, in week number 13, they went up against the other New York team, the Giants, and in that game, the Dolphins defense had 3 sacks, 1 INT, and 9 points allowed up against Mike Glennon. The Dolphins defense has allowed fewer than 10 points in 4 of their last 5 games. The only game where they allowed over 10 points was, interestingly enough, up against the Jets and Joe Flacco a couple of weeks ago. Last week, the Jets faced off up against the Saints, and in that game, the Saints defense dominated the Jets from the beginning of the game all the way until when the whistles blew at the end of the game. 3 sacks and 9 points allowed up against Mr. Zach Wilson. I personally believe that the Miami Dolphins are the locked and loaded number 1 streaming defense on the week, and I would not be surprised at all if they were the number 1 defense ranked at the end of the week. This is such a cupcake matchup for the Miami Dolphins. I understand that Joe Flacco somewhat shocked the world as he played somewhat decently up against the Dolphins defense, but with how much the Miami Dolphins defense blitzes, they blitz at one of the highest rates inside the National Football League, I believe that Zach Wilson is going to crumble in this game, and this is a very easy matchup for the Miami Dolphins defense, especially since they're coming off the bye. They're going to be very ready to smoke the Jets. I love the Miami Dolphins defense this week. They are, again, my number 1 defense to stream, and the defense that I am very confident in on the week. Next up, we move to my number 2 defense to stream on the week, and that is the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Chicago Bears this week in Chicago. Right now, the Vikings defense is currently being rostered in 14.6% of leagues on NFL.com. The Minnesota Vikings defense went up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in probably the weirdest game of week number 14 on Thursday Night Football. In that game, the Vikings defense absolutely was bending Big Ben over and pounding him out relentlessly early on in the game, but as the game kept going after halftime, then it was like the most Vikings game ever, because they almost choked to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was very similar to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the LA Chargers primetime game we saw a couple of weeks ago. In this game up against the Steelers, the Minnesota Vikings defense had 5 sacks, 1 INT, and 28 points allowed. This game should not have been close at all, but the Pittsburgh Steelers almost pushed overtime, despite the fact that the Vikings were winning the whole entire game. And the Vikings defense is prone, as well as their offense, to doing some stupid shit like this, where the game is so easily theirs, and somehow magically, out of nowhere, the other team just comes back and wins the game. We saw it up against the Lions, here up against the Chicago Bears, though. I do think the Minnesota Vikings defense is pretty solid when they are on, and going up against the Chicago Bears offense with Matt Nagy as the head coach, I just think they are going to look very good in this game. Last week, the Packers defense went up against the Chicago Bears in that Sunday Night Football matchup. 2 sacks, 2 INTs, 1 fumble recovery, 1 touchdown, and 30 points allowed up against the Chicago Bears. Now, I understand that 30 points allowed for the Packers up against Chicago is definitely a little bit weird, as is the 28 points allowed by the Minnesota Vikings up against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. But at the end of the day, I just think that Justin Fields is going to struggle a bit in this matchup. This offense for the Bears is just not good. And the Bears had a lot break their way in that game up against the Packers. A lot of these moves, like especially the Jakeem Grant touchdown, Don't really see that happening again this week up against the Minnesota Vikings, so I think they will be just fine here up against Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears. I do definitely like the Chicago Bears offense, though, a lot better with Justin Fields under center when compared to Andy Dalton, but again, the Vikings defense will be just fine. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles, going up against the Washington Football Team, an NFC East battle. The question is right now, is this going to be the Eagles versus Kyle Allen, or is this going to be the Eagles versus Taylor Heineke? Heineke was clearly hobbled last week in that game up against the Dallas Cowboys, and I think even if he's able to be good to go in this game, he gets the nod to be the starter on the team. I do think that he will not be 100% in that game. The Eagles defense right now is currently being rostered in 18.2% of leagues on NFL.com. The Philadelphia Eagles were on bye in week number 14, so we're going to go ahead and backtrack to week number 13 to look at their defensive stats in that game of Gardner Minshew versus the Jumbo Jets. So we had the Eagles defense going up against the Jets in MetLife. In that game, the Eagles defense had 2 sacks, 1 INT, and 18 points allowed. I do not believe that the Philadelphia Eagles have one of these upper echelon defenses in the NFL, but a lot of the time, when you are looking for a defense to stream in fantasy football, you're not necessarily playing the defense because they're one of the most elite units in the NFL. You are playing them based upon the matchup, and I think up against the Washington Football Team, the Philadelphia Eagles defensively should be able to have a solid day. The Cowboys last week up against the Washington Football Team in Washington, 5 sacks, 1 INT, 3 fumble recoveries, 1 touchdown, and 14 points allowed. This was a game that the Dallas Cowboys should have won by 1,000,000 points. This game should not even have been close because the Washington Football Team offense couldn't get it going at all. Antonio Gibson is clearly banged up, but they have to keep playing him. He's clearly hobbled. They're not giving him the ball. The man fumbles the ball once. They bench him. This Washington Football Team's offense is down tremendous right now, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles defense will be able to get it done in terms of fantasy this week. Do I project the Eagles to be a top 5 defense at the end of the week? No, but I do certainly think that they are startable. Thus why I'm going to be discussing them inside of today's video. The next defense we are going to break down here, but before we get on into that, I would like to ask if you have ended up enjoying thus far, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below as well as that like button. Now, this defense may make you a little bit nervous to start, and I agree. I'm a little bit nervous to start them as well, but again, we are playing based upon the matchup, and that is a defense that is 0.5% rostered on NFL.com. Urban Meyer's own Jacksonville Jaguars going up against the Houston Texans. Now I know this may sound gross, and if I'm being honest with you, you could probably also start the Houston Texans defense in this game. I'm not going to be talking about them in the video, but if you want to flip it and go the other way, I wouldn't judge. This game just reeks of like a 14-7 game that stinks, and you never even see it on Red Zone. It doesn't even grace Scott Hansen's eyes. You'll probably see it. Obviously, you're going to see it like once or twice, but this game just reeks. This game is just atrocious. Davis Mills versus Trevor Lawrence. Now, I understand Trevor Lawrence is being built up as this guy all offseason, the draft season, obviously, from when he played in college. This is the best college prospect since Andrew Luck. Am I going to disagree with that based upon a small sample size of games in his rookie year? No. Why is that? Because Urban Meyer is a fucking bozo, and he has completely ruined Trevor Lawrence's rookie year, but it is what it is. There are reports, though, that apparently the GM of the team wants Urban Meyer back next year, and if that is the case, then we're not drafting any Jaguars in fantasy football. But in terms of the defense, last week up against the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee, they did end up getting shut out, but the Jacksonville Jaguars had 4 sacks and 20 points allowed defensively. I think up against the Houston Texans, who only got 13 points up against Seattle, they got sacked twice last week in Houston. I think the Jaguars will be able to get it done. Now again, is it ever sexy? Are you ever excited to start the Jacksonville Jaguars defense? Of course not. Fuck no would be the answer that you probably thought inside of your brain, but at the end of the day, I'm still fine doing it because this matchup just reeks, and I hope this is a low-scoring game. I just really do, because these teams both suck so much that this could just be a beatdown by one of the teams, but I think it will be relatively low scoring. Final defense to discuss in today's matchup, or not in today's matchup, in today's video, of course, is the Cincinnati Bengals at the Denver Broncos. The Bengals defense is currently being rostered in 8.4% of leagues on NFL.com. The Cincinnati Bengals went toe-to-toe up against the 49ers last week, having 5 sacks and 26 points allowed in that overtime loss up against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I understand that the Denver Broncos just absolutely clowned the Detroit Lions. The Lions defense, week 14 at Mile High in Denver, 1 sack, 38 points allowed, right? But there's a big difference between the fucking Lions defense and the Cincinnati Bengals defense. The way the Denver Broncos move the ball is by running it. Teddy Bridgewater sucks. Teddy Bridgewater is not very good at all, and I tweeted this out a couple of days ago, but just imagine how fun it would be to watch Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy be good if Gardner Minshew was the starting quarterback, not Teddy Bridgewater of the Denver Broncos. The way they're going to win this game is by running the ball, so I think the Cincinnati Bengals will be able to actually make Teddy Bridgewater make a couple of mistakes, thus being a start-worthy defense on the week. Again, am I super excited? Am I banging the drums for the Cincinnati Bengals? No, but with how kind of dry it is to find a defense this week that you want to stream, it is quite hard because of all the matchups that the Cincinnati Bengals do fit the bill this week as a defense to stream. And again, I think if you want to stream the opposite way on Jacksonville, maybe you don't trust Jacksonville, you think Urban Meyer's an idiot like I do, maybe you flip to the Houston Texans. I think they're also noteworthy on the week. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, please make sure to hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. I would appreciate it a ton. I love you guys all. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.